I didn't see you there. It's me, Derek, the community steward here at ETH Denver, aka SporkDAO, back for another edition of Front End Wednesdays, where we go far together. What's the African proverb? If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. So we're going to go far together learning front end. We've been learning React for 2 weeks now, so this is number 3. And we left off in the middle of the React Docs tutorial for tic-tac-toe. So we're going to pick that up in just a moment here. But first, I'm going to ignore you while I make sure that this is live and announced in Discord and Twitter. So thanks for hanging tight. I'm sorry, I don't have like interlude music or something. But please say hi to me over in the chat. I want to know who's here. Start. Great. Great. Okay. And then where was my little link to myself for picking up where we left off? There it is. Suede! I saw you at the very end of yesterday's stream over in the chat, and I ended it right before I could say hey to you. It's good to see you again, Suede. How have you been? Okay. Thank goodness. Okay. Goodbye. Goodbye. Great. And who else is here? For those of you that joined in the last 2 seconds, because I did a whole intro that you all missed, go back and watch the VOD. I was saying hi. This is the 3rd edition of Front End Wednesdays, and we're going to pick back up in the middle of a React tutorial. So if you don't know front end, if you don't know React, this is the perfect place to be. If you do know a little bit of front end and you want to brush up your skills with things like what's a component, what is state, how does state get passed between components via props, and what all kinds of weird syntax do I need to learn just to obey React's super opinionated. I mean, React is famously not opinionated compared to Angular and Vue, but still, there's a lot you need to learn about how to play with it and what it will allow you to do and not do. Oh. Let's crush together, Suede. Also, hi, Frankenmiller. You continue to be like, not even newbie of the week. What is it, like newbie of the 2 or 3 weeks since you've really started like showing up and contributing? I see you everywhere. Like, I'm not very active in the Discord, but I read everything and I've seen you all over it. So it's been good to see you around. It's the type of super active participation that I would call community. Like, I think people just like even this, like the fact that we're interacting back and forth is a huge step above like the Derek show where it would just be like me. Like if I was pre-recording these, I don't think that's community. But the fact that there's even this much back and forth is at least a step better. And then eventually I would want you all to come up here and we could talk to each other about it. But I'm not going to pretend I'm an expert at this stuff. So let's dive in. We are going to pick up where we left off. I'll do a little bit of a reminder in more specific terms. But I need your help. Let's make sure that the text size is legible on this. Hey, I'm down in the corner now. So this seems kind of small. Is this too big? Is this good enough, or would you like it a little bigger? And then there's also over here. Beam, you know for a fact this is the Derek Show. It's a not so secret that I do these because I like attention. Okay, nice. And then is this over, this second tab is called Code Sandbox. So when I've got the React docs, that's tab 1. And then tab 2, we've got Code Sandbox where we're playing with it. A little on the small side for some monitors. Thank you, Ryan Glenn, over on YouTube. So boom, I'm going to bump it up there. We can get away with this. Yeah, let's do it all the way like that. There's no reason not to. And then over here, can we bump it up like that? Oh, we lose our sidebar. Ooh, that was a huge jump. All right, we're going to do it as zoomed in as we can. But before that, I'll zoom out a little so we can use that sidebar to remind ourselves where we are. So this is the introduction. Hi. We're about to resume Front End Wednesdays, where we go far together in learning React. If you've been watching the last 5 minutes, you just heard me say that for the third time. It's because I'm still getting used to, like, as people roll into a party, like, if you're going to give an opening speech, like, how many people do you wait to arrive before you do it, right? I've waited 5 minutes. Here's the opening speech. In the context of learning React, which is, in my humble opinion, a strategic choice if you want to learn front end and have a lot of options in front of you, we're choosing this one strategically because that's where all the jobs are. And it's also the most commonly used and known. So out of all of our options, we've chosen React. And in the context of learning React, we went through their quick start guide, learned some of the basics about components and state and updating state. And now we are going through an example of using it so we can develop the muscle memory of using these new pieces together. Along the way, we are learning how to make a tic-tac-toe board where you can click, and I'll show you the end goal here. This is the thing we are making where you can click, and it's a tic-tac-toe game. It includes a really interesting piece about time travel where you can move back and forth. And if you move back and then choose a new thing, it creates, oh, it looks like there was a winner. It also keeps track of the winner if there's a winning arrangement. So a lot happening here. So far, we've got the board, and we are only making X's, and it doesn't know when we win. So we're picking up here at, we've learned how to pass data through the props. We refactored a little bit. We have a couple different components. We've got a square component. The square knows what to do when it gets clicked, and has a button. The square is the button. And we have a board component, which itself has 3 divs. These are not themselves components. We're just making little divs in here. But in each div, each row, there are 3 squares. So we've got 3 square components being created. And then we do this clever thing with the styling. Class name equals board row. Over in our CSS, that's how we got it to be 3 rows instead of 1. Like if we hadn't done this, let me show you real quick what that would look like. So I commented that out. It would just be 9 squares in a row. So we used styling in React. You use class name to do the CSS class. And that's what does this new line thing. And that's where we're at. The last thing we did was refactor the square out as a separate component, let each square keep track of its own state, and then implement this on click. What happens? Handle click, a custom function we wrote that just changes it to X. Soon we'll probably update that to either be X or O, depending on where we're at. So let's continue. We were at building the board. There we go. Is this truly where we left off? Let's see. No, definitely we were further than this. The arrested development, I've made a horrible mistake. Let's make sure we start in the right place, yeah? Okay, don't get hacked. Completing the game. There we go. We were all the way down at completing the game. Let's continue. It's time for a story. At this point, we have our basic building blocks. Now we need to alternate between X's and O's. That's a design criteria for our app, is instead of all X's, it's X's and O's that alternate. And we need a way of figuring out if there is a winner at any given moment and then stopping. You don't continue to play after there's a winner. So we're going to implement both of those right now. Lifting state up from the each square component to a higher level. So each square is keeping track of its own state, but in order to figure out the winner, we would need to keep track of all of the squares' state at some higher level that can see them all at the same time. The squares are not aware of each other's state, which is why we don't need to do separate variable names. The scope of value is only within the square component. So all 9 of these squares have a variable called value, but they don't conflict with each other because the scope is limited to the square. What we need to do now is have that state get passed up from the per square level to the entire board level so we can look at it in one place and ask, is this total thing having a win right now or not? Does the board ask each square? You could do it that way, but it's discouraged. And it's discouraged because it would look ugly to do it that way and be error prone. Instead, what if we moved where state is up to a higher level, refactored it up to the board level, and then pass state down to each square from there instead of letting it start and end inside the square? I'll zoom in a little bit. To collect data from multiple children or have 2 child components communicate with each other, declare the shared state in their parent component instead. And the parent component can pass that state back down to the children via props, these input parameters for each component. This keeps the child components in sync with each other and with the parent. Okay, lifting state into a parent component is common when React components are refactored. Okay, so we're probably going to see this a lot in our life. You start with state being in one place, and then eventually you're like, dang it, this state is relevant to that other component. Time to refactor my code and move it up. So we're going to edit board so it has a state called squares, an array with 9 slots. Board squares set squares, use state array 9.fill null. An array that's 9 long. So this will have indices 0 through 8, yeah? I am still getting used to the whole counting starting from 0 thing. Write it out by hand just to get a little muscle memory going. Const. Squares is set squares. The second one, I hope so. Was it use state? Lovely. And now we're going to make our array. An array. It doesn't like that. Is it like that? That's an object. I'm going to go for that one. That's 9 long that we fill. We're using the fill method on array. The fact that it's auto-completing this is a good sign that I correctly made an array object. With the capital A, that is. Fill it with null as the default value. Okay. And then my only problem should be we're not using squares or set squares. Let's check. How'd we do, coach? Capital A array, use state, set squares is the second one, fill with null. I did it. I forgot a semicolon, but it's JavaScript. Didn't technically matter. And my linter should have taken care of that anyway. So we put that in the board component above the return logic. Because return is like our display logic in JSX. This is some state logic above it. Just like over here, our square returns the button JSX. But before that, we talk about things like the value logic and this handle click function that the square has. So we're probably going to have each square get past some state. I totally forget the syntax, but it'll be like, parentheses or like curly braces or something. And we're going to pass in, I'll just pretend it's like a function for a moment. We're going to pass in squares, an array, and each one's going to get a different index. Frankenmiller, I'm glad to hear that this is really clicking for you. This is my first go around, so I will always, you might think that I'm playing dumb for the sake of like being the audience surrogate. I literally don't know front end. I think I deserve some clappas for like writing the line between learning and teaching it in real time. I didn't read these docs before this, so am I really good at this or what? Huh? Come on, give me a little encouragement. This is kind of crazy to do on the fly. My brain is doing a lot of pieces all at the same time. Array, yeah, we got it. When you fill the board in later, the array will look something like this. So just so we have a mental model, we've got this array with 9 different indices, And depending on the order that the game state evolves, they all start as nulls. And then depending on whether you click like the top left one or the bottom right one, it'll update the state to either be an X, a string that's capital X, or a string that's capital O. Thank you, Suede. Okay, sure enough, I forgot this syntax. Value equals sign, curly brace, and then the variable we're passing down, specifically an index of the array as indicated with these square brackets. We can do that. So value equals left curly brace, squares at the 0th position, close my curly brace. Great. So now we're going to replace all these with that and then update which index of the array each one refers to. Interesting. The good news is when I save, it'll fix that for me. Save. And we started counting at 0, not at 1, because arrays start counting at 0. I will try to refer to them as the 0th through the 8th square, rather than as the first square through the 9th square. So just so we're all clear, when I say the first square, I mean this one. All right, there were different ways we could do it. I'm telling you which one I'm doing, where I call this the 0th and I call this the 8th, and they all fall in between. Okay, so we refactored that. Up next, I'm going to go ahead and guess that each square is going to receive value as a prop. And that's why we won't need this anymore. And then value is being handled the same way, but rather than the state living in this component, as this state updates, it gets passed back up to where it came from, the board level. But we haven't used set squares. That's a clue. Set value is over here. So let's just stumble through it and then we'll see what the docs say. If I do this, it didn't pass down set squares. This logic doesn't work because the scope of square does not include both pieces of this hook. We pass down squares. Okay. Wouldn't I have to do like set squares 0 anyway? Know what I mean? Oh, yeah. See, this is why I like guessing what it's going to be, because I can tell I'm wrong, but now I know why I'm wrong. And I'm like, ooh, how do they do it then? So we're going to do something like pass down value, and then we're going to receive value, and then I don't know what we're going to do in this new format, where instead of value being something we declare in the scope of the component, but instead is being passed down as a prop, I don't know how we're going to handle set value, which used to be a simple function right here. How are we going to pass down set squares? Or not? Maybe we move handle click also up to the board level and then pass down handle click as another prop that the component is aware of. That's just a guess. Now we edit the square to receive value. Hey, I did it, and I even did it with the curly braces right. Clap up. And then we need to remove value and the buttons on click prop. Ooh, did not expect that. This is a hint about how we're going to change the clicking behavior. So this goes away. Goodbye. This also goes away. Goodbye. This strongly suggests handle click is about to either get deleted or moved up to the board level. Do I see an empty board? Yes. And you code. Okay, I'm not going to take us on a super long detour, but I am going to make a mental note to go make a pull request at the end of the stream. And you. Because I love giving back to the lovely people that created these docs. They're giving us the gift of these docs. I would like to give back with light copy editing for spelling errors. I'm going to add an R to this website someday. Square. So right now Square should only have this logic class name button. Class name and the value. Yep. Okay. Goodbye, handle click. How on earth are we going to handle the clicks? Use state, array 9, bada boom, bada bing. Great. So far, so good. Each square now gets its own value prop that starts as null, and then depending on if and when it's clicked, updates to X or O. Frankenmiller, what's the secret? Tell me. I would love to know. Okay, now let's handle the clicking. So board is keeping track of which squares are filled. So we need a way for Square to update board state, which is one level higher. State is private to a component that defines it. We cannot update board state directly from Square, like I tried to. I tried to use set squares in the button, but it wouldn't let me, in the square, rather. We need to pass down a function from the board to the square. It's very similar to my guess, but I think we'll need one little piece of abstraction in between. We're going to write a new function called onSquareClick. On click, we do onSquareClick. So each square receives a value and has an onClick behavior of calling this function onSquareClick. How does it know about onSquareClick? Can you pass down functions like that? Are we going to define it up here at the board level and pass it down? Are we going to do something like that? And then pass down value equals and on square click equals array set squares of, and then I can just decide right here which one it is. And I don't even need to do this. Okay, so my guess is I can pass down as I create each square component. What the hell? Get banned. Get out of here. Had a spammer on YouTube. My guess is that I can pass down not only this value, this piece of state, but I can also pass down this function that I'm defining right here on SquareClick. I can really just define it here. Like, why is it not throwing an error? The fact that I hadn't done like, what I had a moment ago. The fact that this isn't defined anywhere. The fact that I can just do it like that. I guess that's true for value too. It didn't exist anywhere else. Cool. Man, I'm going to be stoked if I'm right. Wait, can I just test if I'm right? Oh, but there's no logic about changing it to X. So where would we put the logic? Maybe we could do it like this. On SquareClick, where we use a number, that would be whatever that number is, or whatever that string is. Can I do like empty string? Does it matter that I'm not saying what it is? No, it doesn't. And then that's it. Do I need to do an empty return? Nope. You didn't like that. Okay. So my question is, can I do it like this? Now I'm breaking one of Derek's cardinal rules, which is not having two different things use the same name. Okay, and then here I would say 0. Too many re-renders. Huh. All right. I'll leave this guess like this. So at the button level, we have something called onSquareClick right here, and then we're going to define that at the board level. onSquareClick to the squares component props. That was a correct guess. Let's go. Now we connect onSquareClick prop to a function in the board component, another correct guess, that we'll name handleClick. onSquareClick handleClick. Okay? Okay, so it's telling us how we relate handleClick, a thing we'll define probably here at the board level in a moment. We pass it in like this. So they use two different names. Lovely. Let's follow along. And, of course, little curly brace. You happy now? You hate it. Of course you do. Okay. We define a function handleClick. Oh, and in this way we use our JavaScript knowledge to get clever about how to modify the array. Next squares. What? All right, let's slow down. First, we'll take it as a given. Then we'll understand. Great. In fact, does it work? It works for the one where we defined it. So we have a new variable being declared here. Next squares. What is next squares? It takes the squares array, our state being handled by this hookup here, and it does the slice method, which I forget and I'll use the tooltip to remind myself about in a moment. Then it sets the 0th index, in other words, the, as humans would say, first spot of that array, to the string capital X. And then lastly, it calls the set squares setter for this hook to update the state of squares to be next squares. In other words, to sort of merge this change back to state. So at a conceptual level, what's happening is we're creating a new variable for a moment, updating it, and then updating state to be that new variable, rather than updating state directly. Potentially one reason we're doing this is just to simplify our logic. It might seem like an extra step, but one extra step is better than several extra steps. So let's look at what slice is letting us do. So it's taking the squares array. Slice is a method that comes out of the box in JavaScript for all array objects. You can call .slice on any array. In other words, we didn't define slice. Slice returns a copy of a section of an array. We did not pass any parameters in slice. It's empty. So what is its behavior when it's empty? Copy the whole thing. Save me MDN. Mozilla Developer. Array prototype slice. Lovely. So if the input array is ant through elephant and you do an empty slice, you get ant through elephant. In other words, you get the whole thing. So slice is a fast way of making a copy of the entire thing when the input parameter you give slice is empty. The two input parameters are where you want it to start and where you want it to end. You can say neither of those, where you want it to start or where you want it to start and end. In our case, we've said nothing. So it's copying the entire array. And then it says the first thing to X. So this doesn't feel complete. Isn't it always going to set the first, the 0th index of the array to X? In other words, if I take this and make it true for all of them, and I reset state, not all of them. My guess is that when I click this, so here's the 0th square. When I click the first square right next to it, my guess is that the way we currently wrote it, it's not going to update this one. It's only going to be able to update the 0th one. That feels so good. That means I understand. Wow. Okay, so we have a cool thing which creates a copy of the state array and then updates the 0th element to X. Problem is, we don't always want to update the 0th element. We want to keep track of which turn it is and update that element. That's not quite right. We want to keep track of which square we clicked and update that element. Adds X to the 0th index. Lovely, lovely. Oh, we should slow down here. Closure is hard. JavaScript supports closures, which means an inner function, handle click. Where's handle click? Handle click is in board, and it gets passed down. Has access to variables and functions defined in an outer function, such as board. Okay, what it's saying is handle click is defined right here, which means it has access to variables and functions that are at its same level right next to it. More specifically, this hook. Handle click is aware of squares and set squares because they are both defined inside board. All right, we can add X's, but only to the upper left square. It's hard-coded to update the 0th index. Let's make handle click. Come on, that's what I said. I'm so good. I'm on it today. Add an argument I. No, I want to add an argument N. N usually means the total number of things, and I is usually just an index, but I'm feeling sassy. So we're going to do it like this. Of the 0th. Of the first. And then we're going to, at the nth index, update it to X. Why is that wrong? See, this is like not useful. People talk all the time. Oh, Rust, its compiler is so useful. It explains what you did wrong and it like gives you suggestions. Well, React doesn't. This is going to be something I'll see a lot of times in my life if I keep working with React, and here I am not knowing what to do about it. How did I do it wrong? Yeah, we did that. And then we did it like that. Yes, that's exactly what we did. Hey, we hit the correct error. We failed in the right way. So handle click will be part of rendering board. And handle click alters the board. The entire board gets re-rendered. Yeah, that makes sense. Handle click is calling, what is it called? Set squares. So the board gets updated when the state of any given square gets updated. But handle click 0 is now part of rendering the board. So we've created an infinite loop. The handle click 0 call will be part of rendering the board component. Rendering the board component. In other words, when this board wants to display itself, and it gets about here, and tries to display itself by displaying the 0th square, in getting ready to instantiate the square and show it, it processes this handle click 0, which surprises me because it's supposed to only happen when we click it. But I guess also rendering the square for the first time calls this. That cannot be true because then it would just update all the squares to be X. I don't understand why this is an infinite loop. To somebody else who's willing to try and explain why, like, what are the two pieces that are calling each other? Or like, why, where's the loop? Handle click alters the state of the board by calling set squares. And then we re-render. Yeah, but handle click 0 is not a part of rendering the board. No, it's not. Why is handle click 0 a part of rendering the board? How come when we render the board, handle click 0 gets called? That is just simply not true. Or rather, it is true and I don't understand why. Why is this part processed? Why does it happen when the board is rendered? It should only happen on square click. What am I missing? Like, we're not clicking. It's supposed to only happen on click. Boy, howdy. Why didn't this happen earlier? When we passed on square click equals the handle click function, we were passing the handle click function down as a prop. You were not calling it. Right, that's what I think is happening now. But now you are calling that function right away. Notice the parentheses in handle click, parentheses 0 and parentheses, and that's why it runs too early. You don't want to call handle click until the user clicks. Okay, I'm learning how this is React syntax, not JavaScript syntax. To fix this, you could create a function like handle first square click that calls handle click 0, a function like handle second square click, and so on. And then instead of calling them, you could pass them down as props. That would solve the infinite loop. Okay, we don't want to do that. 9 different names of functions is too verbose. We could create an arrow function. In other words, an anonymous function where we define it right here. This is a JavaScript thing. And we say function, no name, parentheses for its input. Output. What does it do? It outputs this. If you don't know about arrow functions, I encourage you to check out MDN arrow function. It's pretty concise and cute. You have your input parameters, and then on the other side of the arrow, whatever logic you want to happen to those input parameters. Okay, on square click, curly braces, arrow function, handle click. Curly braces, empty arrow function, handle click. Okay. Huzzah. Still not totally clear to me why that isn't good enough. So we were passing it down as something that's like happening right now, like we were calling it as we were passing it. And instead what we're passing down is this, like, it's probably better to be verbose for a second. Handle first click, which is a function. I'm going to write it as a function. I need to write this because we can't, it's the learning phase. You can't skip steps of learning. So we're going to go, boom, handle first click. This is a function. And what does handle first click do? It does handle click 0. Okay, lovely. And what we do up here is handle first click. So this did not trigger the infinite loop thing. So the 0th square, when on square click happens, when on click, it's looking for something called on square click, a prop that got passed down. And that prop itself is this function handle first click. Handle first click is a function where when it gets called, calls the function handle click at the 0th index, and then does the updating state thing. Ta-da. However, that's verbose because we'd need to write 8 more. So instead of defining a function just to have it do one thing, we're going to be more terse. We're going to say, here's my function definition, and here's my function logic. Function, so notice handle first click isn't happening anymore. That's why this is also called an anonymous function. It doesn't have this name. It doesn't need this name. As far as the square component's concerned, its name is on square click. What happens when a square is clicked? Well, on square click, whatever that was. And whatever that was is this little piece. And that is why it doesn't need a name. On square click just does whatever's in here. And whatever's in here is a concise way of saying no input parameters, function, return, handle click 0. Thanks, arrow function. So because this works, we are going to go ahead and copy paste this to all of them. I can safely do this because I know great, that we are going to update the logic in handle click up here to handle the X's and O's thing. That is probably our next problem to solve. Yes, this is fun. Oops. Hello? There we go. Great. 6, 7, 8. 6, 7. There's probably a fancier way of doing that, but I don't know it. Okay, yay, we can update squares. We refactored state. We brought state up from the square level to the board level, which broke how we update state. So we also refactored handle click. We had to bend over backwards to do that. Two of the ways we bent over backwards were this logic for calling set squares, where we copy the array, update it, and then immediately merge that update back to set to squares via the set squares setter, and then forget about next squares. Next squares dies right here. It no longer exists. That's closure for you. So we create a copy just so we can make the original a copy and then destroy the copy all in 3 lines. And then we also had to overcome the awkwardness of React. We had an infinite loop because we were trying to give each component an on square click function, which had to be at the higher level now. And we did that by writing the function up here, but we had an infinite loop because it was just calling the function on board render, which meant that it was calling the function updating state, calling the function updating state, infinite loop. We got around that by making it not something which is called immediately, which it would be if it was naked like that, but instead an empty arrow function, in other words, an anonymous function that says, I'm a function. I have no input parameters. When you call me, I do this logic, which somehow is better for React. So we did that. Now all 9 of our squares can update their state. Yay! How do we make them alternate between X's and O's, though? Before I guess, let's see what Frankenmiller said. Later in the Twitch, let's try and find a fresh GitHub repo that contains React code, then fork it into your own GitHub. I'll show you the slick method to create Saran docs directly from GitHub. All right. Frankenmiller, would you be willing to find me some not overwhelming React repo? Like maybe even, I don't know, is SushiSwap too complicated? It'd be cool if it were a Web3 dApps front end. And a lot of Web3 dApps have public GitHub repos for their smart contracts and their front ends. Maybe Uniswap. That'd be awesome if we could like find the Uniswap repo, fork it, run it locally, have it not work, or one of yours, even better. Okay, I'll make a note. We'll come back to that in about half an hour. For now, let's guess how we're going to switch between X's and O's. So it's odds and evens. That's not hard. That's amazing. But not whether the square index is odd or even, but rather the turn order. So we'll probably need a new piece of state called turn number, which is either one variable, like a number that we just increment as we go, or more likely a array where we keep track of the history of the game at each index of the array. So it starts as like turn history will be like XOXOXO, but if it's even fancier, it'll be like the 0th index will be like X at, and then it'll say which square X clicked. And if it's even a little more sophisticated, we wouldn't need to say it's X or O. We would know that it alternates between even and odd. And so this thing, instead of being turn number, which is implied by which index of the array it is, and instead of being whose turn it was, which is also implied by whether it's an even or odd number in the array, it would simply be which square was clicked. So it would more accurately be called turn history. And it would look something like an array with up to 9 elements that goes like 0, 8, 2, 4, 5. Game over. X wins. Something like that. Okay. The DOM document object model button elements on click attribute has a special meaning to React because it is a built-in component. Button, that is. For custom components like Square, the naming's up to you. You could give any name to squares on square click prop or boards handle click, and the code would work the same. We said that last week. In React, it's conventional to use on event names for props which represent events, and handle event for the function definitions which handle the event. In other words, on click, handle click, or on square click, handle click. We could also call it handle square click. That would still be in the React nomenclature system. Okay. Why immutability is important, I'm not sure. Note how in handle click we use slice. Oh yeah, now we get to understand why we have to make a copy. Call it what it is to be readable. Yes, I guess a version of this is with things like this and what Beam Me Up Now just said. If you call it what it is, then it's more readable. You get to a place where you don't need documentation. The code base, to somebody who has a working familiarity with React, if you were going to fork this code and wanted to understand what it does, one way to do that is the person who created the code base also created documentation that you could read through. Some would argue even better, skip documentation and just write function names and variable names and arrange them in a way that all makes sense, maybe according to like a commonly agreed upon set of best practices in the community, so that you can sort of read the code and just understand what it does at a glance without needing somebody to explain it to you in like a paragraph format. You would then add a layer potentially of the oh gosh, what's it called? The like at dev annotations as you make notes in files. Documentation parser. NatSpec, which is unique to Solidity, but is a copy of a thing that a lot of programming languages use called Doxygen. We learned that on Smart Contract Mondays, which I encourage y'all to come to as well. In other words, instead of writing docs, you can choose function names that make sense. And if you want to be even nicer, you can put notes in the code for other developers to read. And there's these fun specific things you could do, like at param, at return, and then describe what the return does. And at dev, which is something meant to be read by devs, and so on. Anyway, why do we have to do this make a copy thing? Why can't we just call set squares and then like do this inside of here? Why couldn't we just write it as one line, this handle click? So in handle click, we call .slice to create a copy of the entire array instead of modifying it directly. There are generally two approaches to changing data. Ooh, we're about to get theoretical. The first approach is to mutate the data by directly changing the data's values. That's intuitive to me. Let me update it. It's my state. It's meant to change. The second approach is to replace the data with a new copy which has the desired changes. So this is the more natural thing. Squares, an empty array, and then you mutate the 0th index. In other words, you mutate one specific piece of it directly. A different way of doing it would be squares, and then this new array, next squares. This could even be next squares equals squares to copy it, and then next squares 0 to update it. But I'm not familiar enough with, like, my gut tells me that might actually not solve the problem. If I just set like next squares equals squares, it might be like still pointing directly to it. What is it called? A shallow copy? And it might mutate it instead of being its own separate thing. Can we find out? This is going to show up a million times in the console because of how React State works. That's not what I want. I want backtick. Where's my backtick? There we go. Nope. I want $. Anyone? How do you do it again? Why can't I do this? Why isn't this working? I mean, I could just do this. Okay, so my question is, if I make a copy like this, a copy of the original array, which is called squares. This has nothing to do with anything outside of this function. And then I update the copies 0th index to a new thing. Instead of null, now it's x. I would like to see, after that update, what is at the 0th index of next squares. I'm pretty confident it'll be x. But more importantly, what is at the 0th index of the original squares, which we have not explicitly updated? Is it still null, like I would hope, or does it maybe change to x, because next squares is not actually a unique thing, it's just pointing over to squares? Let's find out. Okay, and then how do I call a test mutation? Sure enough. And that's why you can't do it that way. Next squares is not actually a unique array that is a copy of squares. Next squares is pointing directly to squares itself. And so by updating next squares, you're actually just updating squares. This is called a shallow copy. And it is not expected behavior. Okay. That was a fun little detour. My background's physics. On your Derek bingo card, you can stamp mentions he has a physics degree. And that's why my preference was to figure out if we could design an experiment to answer that question for ourselves instead of searching for the answer. Okay. Very explicit. And we did not mutate. And here's why that's nice. What are our benefits? Convince me it's worth it to do it the long way. Immutability makes complex features much easier to implement. Later in this tutorial, we're going to implement a time travel feature that lets us review the game's history and jump back to past moves. The ability to undo and redo is a very common requirement for apps, this time travel idea, keeping track of previous state and being able to revert to it and move forward again, not lose the future, in other words, when you go to the past. Avoiding direct data mutation lets you keep previous versions of the data intact and reuse them or reset to them later. Oh, my array thing was a little wrong. We're going to keep track of turn order by keeping track of the entire board as an array, and then we're going to have up to 9 different versions of the entire array. It's like board state equals null, 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 null. Board state after first move equals X, null, 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 null. And we'll keep track of 9 different versions of the array as we go. You can have an array of arrays, right? It'll be like how many turns can there be including 0, before, and then 9 more. So it's 10, which means I need 10 slots. And I also want to immediately, like, is there a React thing for like on first load? Like instead of use state, it's like on start, or like use I just started, but it doesn't happen on every render. Are those called hooks? Use state? What is use state called? It's a hook. Okay. So React hook on mount. Use effect. And let's guess. Const. How do I use effect? Can I just... I want to set turn history at the 0th index to... No. That's not quite right. Okay, I'm getting pretty deep in my own guessing. I'm going to leave this here because it's good enough for capturing where I think we're going. An array of arrays, in other words. Let's see how they do it. There's another benefit of immutability. By default, all child components re-render automatically when the state of the parent component changes. This includes even child components that weren't affected by the change. That's a lot of rendering. Although re-rendering is not by itself noticeable to the user, you shouldn't actively try to avoid it. Don't go out of your way to avoid these things updating. It's okay they update. You might want to skip re-rendering a part of the tree that clearly wasn't affected by it for performance reasons. Never mind what I just said. You do want to intentionally skip the re-renders of all the other parts. Immutability makes it very cheap for components to compare whether their data has changed or not. Okay. So the state is kept track of as this array with 9 elements. And when we click, only one of the elements gets updated, and React, if we do it this way, has made it very cheap for it to figure out, in other words, use computer power to process which of the child components needs to update. The answer is only the one that got clicked. So figuring out that answer is cheap in terms of computer power as a result of this immutability pattern we're using. In other words, we're saving money, baby. Compute is a finite resource in the world, total amount of computer power, and there's a market for it, and it's, I mean, obviously, like you mine cryptocurrencies using computer power, so we've been aware of computer power as like commodity for a while now. Taking turns. It's now time to fix a major defect. O's. Let's get some O's in there. You'll set the first move to be X by default. Let's add another piece of state. X is next, set X is next. And it initializes as true. Right above set squares. All right, that's a silly way of doing it. Good enough for me. Each time a player moves X is next, a Boolean will be flipped to determine which player goes next, and the game state will be saved. You'll update the board's handle click function to flip the value of X is next. Ooh, this is verbose. Oh, there's one little piece of cleverness in there. Great. So this is a variable called X is next. If it's true, X is next. If it's not true, in other words, if it's false, O is next. More accurately, if it's true, X is next, and in all other cases, such as null, undefined, the number 0, and false, it'll set O. Okay. Let's grab this for our handle click. we've just done this little piece is the new piece. And I've lost my N. Now they're I's. You win. And at the end, for those who are not familiar with this little trick, we use the setter, set X is next. And then this means not. Whatever X is next is the opposite of that. So if X is next is currently true, exclamation point X is next means the opposite of true. So it would set it to false. And likewise, if X is next was false, the opposite of that is true. So this would set it to true. So this is a nice, concise way of saying, whatever it is, I want the opposite of that. Oh, lovely. But here's the problem. We can click on squares multiple times. We need some way of forbidding that. Or we could invent a new game where you can do that. Wait a minute. How would that work? Let's play that game. Go away. How do I zoom in on just this? No. I wish I could just zoom in here. So I'm going to go X. And this game sucks. Okay, X, O, X, O, X, O, X. This is a very hard game to win. I will say that. Wait, can you even win 2 in a row in this game? X, O, X. Yes, you can. Okay. So, we have our problem. We need to make it so, beautiful, beautiful solution. So we want a piece of logic. Remember that we're keeping track of the value of all the squares, which starts as null, 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 null. We're keeping track of that right here, an array of nulls. And then as the game progresses, we're updating the indices in this array, one spot at a time, to either the string capital X or the string capital O. Here's the nice thing about those strings. They're truthy. In JavaScript, if you say if and then any string, see you, Juan Geraldo, good to see you, then it will register as true. In other words, where am I? If true. If true. How do I do this? Arrow function. Start. If true. Console.log. It was true. Never mind. Moving on. Dang it. All right. So in the handling of the click, we are first going to do a piece of logic called if squares at the ith index return. We're going to fix the problem of being able to click a square that's already been clicked by adding a little piece of conditional logic to the handle click function that escapes or returns early at the very beginning if the square they're trying to click has already been clicked. And the way it checks is it goes if square at I. If this is the string X or the string O, this actually reads as true, which is what I meant by it's truthy in JavaScript. There's truthy and falsy, where you can sort all things into either true or false, including things that are not true and false, which are Booleans, like numbers and strings and undefined and null. So, or an object, a fancy object, is either truthy or falsy. All strings are truthy. And because this is true, it just returns immediately. So it runs this function, but the function is now much shorter and it does not update state. So let's add this piece. Like that. Now I can click X and O, but if I click something that was already clicked, it's running handle click, but it's also stopping pretty early before it updates state. Now we need to know when somebody wins. A helper function called calculateWinner, which is going to exist below the board function. This is a new function, calculateWinner. CalculateWinner needs to know the value of the squares array, our state, and then we give calculateWinner this new variable called lines, which is itself all the different combinations of win positions. And then what it does with lines is it iterates over lines. It, in other words, takes lines in one index at a time. More accurately, it runs this loop the length of lines number of times, and each time it reads in whichever increment of lines we're on in our for loop and grabs, destructures ABC from whichever one of these we're on. So this is an array of arrays, but to make our life easier as we iterate, we're just going to grab one of the arrays out of the array and save it as ABC, A, B, and C. A, B, and C on the first go are 0, 1, and 2. A equals 0, B equals 1, and C equals 2. Then we do all this, and then we loop again. I updates to 1. We go to the 1th index, the first index. A equals 3, B equals 4, C equals 5, and we do the logic again. Now the fun part. If squares at A, in other words, as we go through the 0th index of squares, clever. Wow, clever. Okay. So there are three things happening here separated by and statements. If squares A, which is an abruptly short statement, it says if squares at this position is truthy, keep going. In other words, if it's not null, if it's not empty, because somebody has not won if the square we're checking. Somebody has not won because of a square if the square we're looking at is empty. There's no way to win on a line or a diagonal or a row that has an empty. So that's what we're checking for here. Then we check if whatever is in that position, for example, in the 0th position, that'd be the top left square, is equal to whatever's in the bth position. Bth. In this first iteration over the loop, that would be 1, which would be the top middle square. Is this X? And if so, is this one also X? Okay. So if it were X, then we keep going, and then these two are both X, so we keep going, and we check if the 8th, in other words, the top left on our first go, is also equal to the cth, which would be the top right. We could have also said B equals to C because of the transitive property. That would be identical. That's fine. So we're checking if A is anything, if A and B are the same, and if A and C are the same. If all those are true, so why wouldn't this work without this piece? Why isn't it enough to just say, is A equal to B and A equal to C? Genuine question for y'all. Would it be enough? Or if it's not, what specifically would be the edge case where it has unintended behavior? If the logic was just, if A and B and A and C are all the same thing, that's a win. Why is that not enough? Why do we need this if squares A also? I'll let y'all chew on it. Please tell me if you think you have an answer. I'm going to move on. Then, if this whole thing is true, if all three pieces are true, then return squares A. For example, if they were all the string X, return the string X from calculate winner. Because then calculate winner, as its output, says X. In other words, X is the winner. Likewise, if they were all O. Beam Me Up now says, why do we need this first thing? If we don't have this first thing, then you have an instant win. Technically, a win for nobody, because the initial state is null, 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 where all the squares are null. And turns out null is strictly equal to null. So if we only had A equals B and A equals C, then we would have a winner when the game starts, and the winner would be null, because it's three nulls in a row anywhere you look. So we need to not make that a win case. That's what we have accomplished with this. If the squares of A is anything truthy, specifically if it's the string X or the string O, then keep going. But if it's null, don't look at that. Thanks, Beam. Let's take this function and paste it under our board. This is board, yeah? Yeah, it is. Okay. Lovely. So I wonder, in the context of React, how we get it to check for a winner every time the board renders. If I'm keeping track of things so far, all of the logic here in the board component, from like here to here. No, I was going to say gets rendered every time any of the state updates. What I'm looking for is a way to run calculate winner when state updates, which I guess would be handle click. Maybe right here. I would say before set X is next, because you don't need to check who's next if the game's over. Oh, beautiful. So we can put calculate winner up in the beginning of handle click. We do not want to update the state after a click if the game's over. So if squares I, if the square has already been clicked, these two vertical symbols, which are the straight character right above the new line return symbol on your keyboard, sometimes called a pipe. So two pipes means or, just like the two ampersands meant and. If that square already has something, or calculate winner returns true, then don't do anything when it gets clicked. And calculate winner is being passed the entire squares array. In other words, the entire board state to check. Let's update that. If squares I, or calculate winner on squares. Neat. But we haven't run calculate winner. We're only running it here? Is that good enough? No, that's pretty clever. But then what about displaying winner, winner? To let the players know when the game's over, you can display text such as winner X or winner O. We'll need a status section on the board component. Okay. Yeah, there we go. Const winner equals calculate winner squares. Let status, we're creating a variable called status. If winner, status is winner, winner. It's a string, winner, colon, and then whatever the value of winner is, X or O. Otherwise, status is next player, and then this very concise way of saying is the next player X or O, depending on the value of is next. X is next, which I'll gloss over. All right, let's get that up at the top. Right, I'm going to put it, right, okay, it's putting it before the return, after that other logic. Okay, and then this is just creating a string, but that string isn't displaying anywhere. So I might put it, let's just make a guess. I can do that. Lovely. I kind of want it here. No. Darn. We'll figure that out later. For now, lovely. Start over. Lovely. Expected behavior. Winner X. We have a lot of pieces. That's great because we're stopping soon. If somebody would like me to dig into what's happening here, just ask, but I'm going to continue unless somebody asks. Oh, here's how they did it. They put it in a div and they styled it with status and they did it above the board. Let's try that. Very similar. They also JSX'd. They did the curly braces so they could display the variable status, but they wrapped it in a div so they could style it with class name equals status, referencing the status part of styles.css. Lovely. Congratulations, you now have a working tic-tac-toe game. And you've just learned the basics of React too. So you... Now what's fun is we could go in the GitHub history of the repo that holds these docs and see exactly who wrote this line, because I want to give them a huge round of applause. That is a very fun little line. So you are the real winner here with the italics and everything. Here's what the code should look like. Ba 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 ba. The only difference is I still have my placeholder how do we handle history thing, which I'll get rid of. Okay. So we've got our code. Adding time travel. How much more is there in the tutorial? A lot. Okay, great. This is a reasonable place to stop. Great. I'll set a little bookmark for us over in discord.gg/sporkdow, which y'all can find here. Look at me, I'm a streamer now. Hooray. And now we get to go to the fun side parts. Side part number 1. What Frankenmiller was saying. Let's find a GitHub repo with React code and then fork it to your own GitHub, because then there's a slick method to create a sandbox directly from your GitHub. Let's fork that repo. You're going to have to walk me through it. There it is. Fork your own copy of Frankenmiller / Buffaloes versus Llamas. Now it's going to be Derek Coleman's Buffaloes versus Llamas. Lovely. Copy master branch only. Yes, please. Great. Now it's in my repo, and there's even a little note about where it came from. Now we're going to learn how to open it up in CodeSpaces. When Frankenmiller, you tell me how to do it. First, I have a question about syncing this with GitHub. I think I signed in. So is this repo only existing as like a cookie in Brave? Uh-huh. All right. Mm-hmm. Something strange has happened. So I can take that URL and just add box to the end of the GitHub part of it. That's interesting. First, let's refresh and see if I'm signed into GitHub. Did I lose everything? No, I did not. Do I have GitHub? I do. This repo is going to be called React.js beta tic-tac-toe tutorial. Beta docs. Tic-tac-toe tutorial. Okay, new repo. Okay. Can I use underscores? I'm trying to do a two-way street here, so I'm taking what's in. What's a Git repository? Why is that an error? Boo. Bummer. Okay, so that did not work. The entire app exists only in Code Sandbox, and it has not been pushed up to my GitHub. But I want those green squares, baby. Okay, great. Boom, GitHub box. Oh, very clever of them to do that. Very clever of them to do that. Bada boom. Okay, how do I... I have to fork to make changes. My dependencies. Okay. Wow. And then in Chinese, what? You added dark mode and Chinese mode. Buffacorn Brigade, which has not been used yet. Fantastic. I see where we're going. Yes, it is. I wonder if it's actually downloading these or not. It does not seem to be. Oh, you wrote a README. GitHub Pages. Cool. Man, you're a hero. So, this is actually an interesting problem, and maybe one we could dig into. So which one of these would be like a terminal where I could do like yarn start or like npm install, right? Like, are you pulling in anything I don't have? There we go. Oh, I saw it for a second. What on earth? Huh. Well, I'm bummed. This would have been very nice. I see what you're going for. Where does Chinese happen? Yes, in the instructions. Yes. You're a hero that you did all this custom stuff before getting to it alternates between X's and O's. Uh-huh. Yeah, use create react app, build mine. Use create react app. All right, Frankenmiller, we're going to do this. I did just try that one. Maybe I'll do a hard refresh. Gosh. Yeah, it keeps throwing these console errors about not being able to fetch the packages. I wonder if it's like me not being signed in or something like that. I mean, I get a sense of where you're going. I'm sure it's beautiful, and I would love to see screenshots over in the Discord. Let's. This is great. Love all these touches. See, this is why you're going to be great at ETH Denver. Like, not only are you curious and experimenting and moving beyond like only doing what the tutorial tells you, you're also fun, which I think makes for a great team member. And also, I learned you can use emojis like this in the context of your code base. Ooh. I think you're not supposed to make this X's next capitalized. That's why it's syntax highlighting it like that. That's not super important, but that's used for components, starting with a capital. I'm not saying that to be critical. I'm saying that because I'm learning a thing. That's something I learned last time, and so I get to share with you. Okay, so that was thing number one. Try to open Frankenmiller's repo in Code Sandbox. I learned how to do it, but it didn't work, and I don't know why, so that's fun. And last thing we're going to do is do a pull request on the docs. Oh, oops. How do we do? Bum? Okay. Nope. Last week. There we go. I'm going to do another one of these. Where's the original? There. Shoot. Okay. Here we go. Oh, it wasn't my typo. I thought it was someone. So we're going to go to content. Docs. Tic-tac-toe. Well, I don't know what it's called. Rude. Oh, is it by subsection? Whoa. All right, team. How do we figure it out? Docs. Tick is not. Oh, is it? Tick. Darn it. Tick is not one of these. So what is it called? This part of the docs. Adding time travel. Completing the game. It's not called completing. It's not called adding time travel. I don't... Beam, how did you do it? How did you find the particular line? Because when I did mine, that's another way we could figure this out. I did it to tutorial-tic-tac-toe.md. Oh, how did I miss that? Where's tutorial? Oh, it's over in tutorial, not docs. Wait a minute. Why is this called tutorial.md? Okay, is this the one? No. This is not the whole thing. Is this not the beta docs? I just want this one. Why is this so hard? Tutorial tic-tac-toe. What search box? Yeah, but like now I can do that from here. I can search this repo. I can search this repo. And we found it. And it was in content learn. Rude, very rude code structure to not have tutorial tic-tac-toe in a folder called tutorial. Super rude. I'm going to refactor their whole file structure. Okay, so we go in there. This is the original repo. Great. We're going to fork. I think the logic or the flow here is I'm going to fork it, I'm going to update, and then I'm going to do a pull request back to them. Can I just update mine though? It's 13 commits behind. I should not do that. How do I delete this? I don't want Derek Coleman React.js. What's the most natural way of destroying it forever? Delete. This is Derek Coleman's React.js. I should be fine to do this if I'm not mistaken. Or I could get even more clever and merge to main. Sync fork. That's what I want. I want to sync my fork. Yes, discard 2 commits. That's fine. And then my branch is now up to date. It grabbed it grabbed the 13 other commits. Ah, much more elegant. Okay. So now I get to go in mine. I'm going to search in this repo. So I'm searching the phrase and ucode in this repo. Not an issue. Fine. That's totally fine. I'm not mad. Octatree. Beta. Nope. What? Docs. Where is it? Here it is, docs. So friggin'. Okay. Beta source content learn. Beta source content learn. Tic-tac-toe. Edit. What does blame do? Oh, see who wrote it. Cool. Blame is a hilarious word for that. Edit the file. And U code. There it is. Updating to and your code. Commit changes. Change and U code to and your code. Commit directly. Hey, what's up, MetaMoney? Let's go. Merman, welcome back. Do I go directly to main? I forget. I want to go directly to main. I'll let Beam tell me if I'm not supposed to. Oh. It just worked. No, this is mine. I want to merge. I see. No. Okay. So I have mine. And I want to contribute. Yes, yes. Okay. From my main to their main. Lovely. Create pull request. Yes. Absolutely. It's working. It's working. Yes, 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 yes. Great. So somebody's going to review this and say thanks and merge it in the next few days or so. And we also have the sad case of not being able to have Code Sandbox create a repo, even though I've signed in with GitHub. Never mind. It worked when I gave it a less fancy repo name to do, I guess. The other repo name had lots of underscores and dashes, and this one had neither of those things. And give me my, what's happening? Chaos. Tic-tac-toe draft. I probably should do that. Okay. Branch. Okay. DevTools. Okay. Oh, it's setting up. Oh, where do I type? Come on, come on, come on. Huge. There we go. Looks pretty different. Guess we can deal with that. Okay. Pretty neat. Pretty neat. No, I did not, because this code did not exist over in my GitHub. But now that it does, or so I think, let's go check GitHub. Your repos. There's tic-tac-toe. So I learned a trick from Frankenmiller today. I'm going to put the word box at the end of this GitHub link, and then Code Sandbox has that like DNS or whatever, and then it updates codesandbox.io/s/github/ and then my username in the repo. And then it loads, and then it loads. Beautiful. And we don't need this. We just need this. Don't need those. And we're back in business, baby. So even if I went onto a new computer, I could go to GitHub and then put the word box in the URL, and I'd be right back here. In other words, this is a very fast way to take a repo that you've been working with and, push it to your GitHub. And then maybe at a Biddle-a-thon, you could be on a colleague's computer, like a teammate's, and be like, oh, let's use my repo. GitHub, boom, box, boom, and you're back in whatever that repo is. And you're like, what if we did this and this? And you're just updating a couple things, the development, like the windows over here on the right. In other words, a very fast iteration loop compared to like, oh, your VS Code's different than mine. Oh, dang, what are we going to do? So I appreciate the like seamless way of like being able to load in a code base from somewhere else and then make tweaks to it and see what those tweaks do very quickly. Very powerful. You could do this on like a freaking Chromebook. This has been an amazing front-end Wednesday. This is mine. So I guess my question is, does yours work yet? And if not, why? So mine worked and yours didn't, which means something about the dependencies. Like, why are these not going? So weird. Like, it's not doing the thing that mine did where it installs the dependencies, right? So weird. It's not even that different than mine. Okay, I have React DOM and React and scripts. React DOM, React and scripts. Web Vitals, that's the one where it's getting hung up. So why isn't this working? It's not installing Web Vitals correctly. Maybe at testings, I'm not sure whether those are happening correctly, but Web Vitals is for sure not. What if I don't? All right, there you go. It just wasn't able to pull Web Vitals for some reason. This is sick. Let's go dark mode, light mode, dark mode, light mode. We're calling this light mode? It's pretty... and then Chinese. Ooh, look at the resizing. That's cool. Fight. This is so good. It's so good. You have alternating X's and O's. Buffaloes suck. Llamas win. Please hit browser refresh button. Play Buffaloes versus Llamas again and again. Let's hang out in Biddle. You're the best, Frankenmiller. How does... Let me go check if Quidly's working in the Discord again. It's been a long time since it was. Yes, the CSS is off. Is that because I didn't do Web Vitals? Yours looks different than mine. Oh, interesting. How do I undo my change? You know what I mean? How do I get my dependency back? Web Vitals. Give it to me. Is this the right version? I think you had a different one. Good luck. Yeah, sure enough. Okay. Hey, there we go. Give Frank at Frank. Nice. Spork. Nice. Token amount. 100 sport. 3 sport. Okay, here we go. I'm trying to do this. /give to Frankenmiller, the crypto of Spork, in the token amount of 50 of them. The message: your version of buffaloes versus llamas is amazing. Thanks for the Code Sandbox tip. Make public? Yes. It's been a long time. Apologize that this doesn't work. Sure enough, didn't work. Life's hard. If you DM me your wallet, I will send you those 50 spork. Quidly, you continue to disappoint me deeply. Okay, everyone. This has been Front End Wednesdays. We continue learning React in the context of the tic-tac-toe game we're building. We're pausing right here so that when we do it next time, we can add time travel, keep track of the board state across turns, and move forward and back. And I might even have a special guest for us next week. Today is Wednesday, January 11th, which means tomorrow we do Design Thursdays at 4 p.m. Mountain. And then on Friday, plot twist, you thought it was going to be the community call. It kind of is. It's at the same time, but instead of being a call over in our Discord, we're going to do what we did last year, the Road to ETH Denver, Raise Your Sporks, Prepping to Biddle series for the next, I forget if it's 5 or 6 weeks, every Friday before ETH Denver. Jason Lee, another one of the stewards who's in charge of BiddleX, the entire Biddler experience, is going to be joining me, and we're going to talk about the different tracks 1 week at a time, what y'all need to know and expect in terms of prizes, bounties, team formation, rules, where to go for help, mentors, and everything else. So come on down to Design Thursday tomorrow at 4, and our Raise Your Sporks, Getting Ready to Biddle at ETH Denver 2023, 1 o'clock on Friday, same time as the community call, but that'll be on Twitch and YouTube instead of over in Discord or on Twitter, because we're going to need to screen share, baby. Suede, you been here the whole time? Dang, dude, you got to talk more. Step it up, Suede. I want to keep this conversation flowing. So thank you so much, Frankenmiller. Thank you, Suede. Thank you, Merman. Thank you, Beam Me Up Now. Is anyone else here? I think that was the crew for this time. Yeah. Oh, and MetaMoney, if you're still there. Bye, everyone. You know where to find me over in the Discord. I am definitely going to ignore you. I'm way too busy making Camp Biddle. Oh, I forgot to advertise Camp Biddle. Did y'all hear about Camp Biddle? We sent out an email. Let's check out Camp Biddle. This is crazy. Did you know this is a thing? I launched this Monday night. I'm so hyped. We emailed all 30,000 people on our listserv, and we're like, yo, apply for this because we're making a cool program that's during ETH Denver. Oh my God, who broke it? I'm so mad. Dang it! Unordered list middle align. That doesn't make sense. I'm not going to say too much about it other than you should go to ethdenver.com/campbiddle and read up on it. So if you're considering joining a 10-day bootcamp during ETH Denver, where folks like Vitalik and Austin Griffith and Kevin Awaki and Patrick Collins and Nader Dabit and a bunch of other smarties are going to explain to noobs in language appropriate to noobs the minimum set of skills you need to be able to participate in the Biddle-a-thon, whether you want to be a smart contract person, front-end person, community and marketing person, or a design person. 4 different tracks like Harry Potter style houses. Get in there like swimwear. This thing is free to attend. I'm project managing the whole thing, so if it's a mess, you know who to blame. And it's during ETH Denver anyway. Like if the only thing you should know is that you have to go the whole time. It's not a la carte. This is a program. It's going to be selective. There are only 250 spots. And when I sent out the email to everybody on Monday night, by Tuesday morning, I'd already had 250 applications. So I would love to see you there. You specifically, the 5-6 people watching this live right now. I would love to see you there if you want to do it. If you already know enough that you're like, I need that 2-on-1 content. I don't need that one-on-one. Like, what is a wallet? Okay, go tell your friend about it. But if you're like, no, I'm noob, I want to participate in Biddle, I want to win big money, but I don't know, what do I do? This is for you. It's to tell you, what do I do? The first 6 days of ETH Denver during Biddle Week, March 24th, a Friday, through Wednesday, March 1st. Lecture, content, workshops, hands-on, amazing. Then those last 4 days, you just participate in the Biddle-a-thon with everybody else. We're going to help you form teams, get your idea going, connect you with the mentors. My dream is you learn the skills you need to go create some cool stuff and maybe make some friends and money along the way. And that's why I do these React tutorials. That's why we create these boot camps. That's why we run the whole event. So help me help you. Let me know if you need anything. Suede, I see you applied to the design track, but you're also thinking about front end. Good to know. I'll try and keep that in mind as I review these. Would love to see you in the design track. We need designers. One of my core things and ETH Denver's core things is there's not enough non-technical developers on teams. It's not a good team to have 3 smart contract devs. It's just not. You make a better product that better serves people if you have a more well-rounded set of skills. Also, Merman, congrats on getting your ticket. I'll see you there. So that's it. This has been Front End Wednesdays. I've been your host. How do I get my cute little... There we go. What? Where's my background? This is crazy. Why is it broken? So rude. Thank you. Making me look like a fool. I have been your host, Derek Coleman, community steward, coming to you from a bedroom, I guess. And I really appreciate y'all for hanging out. It's been an absolute pleasure. Like I've said halfway several times, you know where to find me in the Discord. Until then, go be the Buffcorn. Apply to Camp Biddle. Tell people about the scholarship at ethdenver.com/scholarship. Do you know about the scholarship? I also made this. That's why I picked my Buffcorn. Yeah, highly encourage you to apply to this if you need a little extra money and a bed during ETH Denver those last 4 days. That's what the scholarship basically is a bed. Okay, I remember to do the important thing, which is mention Camp Biddle and mention the scholarship at the end. Okay, bye. It's been a pleasure, y'all.